Hi, General Avivi, thanks for being here. You're in from the State of Israel. We touched down in Warsaw, where we briefed the Secretary of State to the Chancellery of the Prime Minister of Poland. And then we moved on to Berlin, and we briefed a think tank over there in Germany. And then we promptly flew to the United States. You touched down in Oregon, and you've arrived here in Los Angeles. And all of this is the beginning stage of a series of briefings that you're giving along with me on the new state solution. So let's begin by just getting a little bit about your background for the people who are watching. Tell us where you're from in Israel, how long you served in the Israel Defense Forces. You're now retired, but you've dedicated your professional life to that. And in particular, I'd like to know your last acting position within the IDF, if you would.
Well, originally I'm from Jerusalem, but I've been living in Samaria for the last 20 years. I'm married to Anat. We have 7 kids at home. I spent my last 30 years serving in the IDF. I joined originally the combat engineers, and then went to officers' corps. I was a company commander and a battalion commander in the combat engineers. Later on, I became aide-de-camp of the General Chief of Staff, General Bogi Ya'alon. And afterwards, I was promoted to colonel. I was a brigade commander on the Egyptian border. I was deputy of division commander of the Gaza Strip. And my last position in the army, I was in charge of the auditing department of the defense establishment of the State of Israel. I audited the army, I audited the Ministry of Defense and the defense industries.
And when you say auditing, you're auditing them for a specific purpose. What is the specific purpose that you're carrying out the audit for?
Well, we audited everything from readiness of the different units, large projects, budgeting, pretty much everything the organization does.
And essentially it's to make sure that when the call to arms comes, the various branches of the Israel Defense Establishment are ready to respond to that effectively, decisively, and with a view to success and victory. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The end state is the readiness of the army for war.
The end state is the readiness of the army for war. Okay, so these are the credentials that you bring with you to these subjects, along with some other credentials. And the subject that we're dealing with, as I said, is the new state solution. Now, why is it that you have attached yourself to the new state solution? And then we'll talk a little bit about what it is.
Well, originally, when I was younger, I supported Oslo. And as the years went along, I saw that this solution is not going anywhere. And I understood that we need to think out of the box and find a new solution. I thought a lot about why it's not working. And I think that the main reason is that it's not meeting real needs of the Palestinians or the Israelis. There are no interests that are met in the Oslo plan. So in the last few years, I thought about it a lot and reached the conclusion that we need a new solution.
And the Oslo plan and the new state solution, they both have this idea which is bringing about an end to conflict. So just to diverge for a moment, you are a general and yet you're dedicated to this idea of ending conflict. Just explain to everybody why that is exactly.
Well, first of all, I believe that all Israelis want to live in peace. I never met an Israeli who likes fighting. We greet each other every day with the word shalom, and we mean it. We really want peace. And I think that especially somebody who has been in war and sees the atrocities of war and sees his friends killed and people injured can appreciate much more the meaning of living in peace.
So you're yearning for this end to the conflict, you're yearning towards a plan that will bring about peace, you said. And you say that that's not the Oslo Accords, that's not the two-state solution. So just to explain, let's run through that very quickly. The two-state solution calls for the establishment of a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, with East Jerusalem as its capital. I want to just touch on a couple of areas there. Why should a Palestinian state not be established in Judea and Samaria? Begin, if you would, just from basic geography. Talk about contiguity, talk about the proximity of the state to the coastline, and then we'll get into some more security-related issues.
Well, the Palestinians are divided in two areas. Half of them are living in the Gaza Strip, about 2 million people, and half of them are living in Judea and Samaria. There is no contiguity between these two areas, and therefore the basic the basic situation is that they are divided. There is no contiguity. Talking about Judea and Samaria have the high mountains overlooking the shallow areas near the sea where the major Israeli cities are located. It's crucial for Israel to control those areas in order to ensure the security of the Israeli people. Therefore, creating a state, Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria will endanger all the major cities of Israel along the shore.
And if a state is established up there on the highlands of Judea and Samaria, how thinly does it draw down the width of the State of Israel too? First of all, tell us how wide the State of Israel is currently, and then if there's a Palestinian state built in Judea and Samaria, how narrow would it be after that change and concession?
Well, the State of Israel is a very small and narrow area. From the sea to the Jordan River, it's 43 miles. And if we create a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, it will be reduced to only 9 miles. Now, I myself, I jog 9 miles every morning. I mean, imagine jogging your whole country an hour and a half in the morning.
So you don't see those lines as tenable from a defense point of view, not only because it reduces the size of the State of Israel, but it also places the people on the lowlands in this very precarious situation where they would be vulnerable to fire from the mountain ranges that we spoke about. Another issue, you spoke about the lack of contiguity. Does the traditional two-state solution, as is commonly understood, in any way assign itself to dealing with the Gaza Strip?
Well, the Gaza Strip has undergone major changes in the last few years. Hamas got control of this area, and today it's a completely different state. There is no two-state solution anymore. We're talking about a three-state solution. The state of Gaza under Hamas rule, and a sub-state in Judea and Samaria under the Palestinian Authority. This is a completely new situation, which is completely ignored in the two-state paradigm.
So when you say a sub-state, one of the hallmarks of a sovereign state is that it has, for example, control over its own security. Now, in the two-state solution, the Israeli security forces, particularly the IDF, would have to maintain a presence along the Jordan River. Can you explain why that is? A lot of people say, no, there's no need for the IDF to be stationed there. You take a different view. I'd like you to explain it.
Well, I think that most of the Israelis and also most of the politicians in Israel, left, center, and right, agree that Israel has to hold the Jordan River. We need to separate the whole Arab world from the area of Israel and the proximity to Jerusalem and to major cities. So in any scenario, Israel is going to be in the Jordan River, and therefore any entity, any Palestinian entity in Judea and Samaria will be completely surrounded by Israel. Anyone going in or out will always go through Israel, and this entity will be demilitarized, and everybody understands that and talks about that. And therefore, nobody is really offering the Palestinians real sovereignty. This is not a state.
So let me ask you something as a general, and then I'll turn to what the alternative is. You've described something that does not have determination over its security forces. You've described something that has the presence of a foreign military within its borders. Would you accept that in your state? And therefore, do you expect that the Palestinians would accept it were they to have a state?
Well, I wouldn't accept that. I think any nation wants full sovereignty and not a sub-state or an autonomy. And I believe that that's why the Palestinians are rejecting this deal from day one. They never accepted it because it doesn't give them the only thing they are looking for, real sovereignty.
Sovereignty, self-determination, and frankly independence. And in fact, these are the tenets of the new state solution. The new state solution is what we're going to be speaking about this evening. And that at its base calls for the establishment of an independent, free, sovereign, thriving and viable state for the Palestinian Arabs. We call for it to be anchored in the Gaza Strip with contiguity into about 10% of the Sinai Peninsula along the coastal enclave there. Explain why, from a security perspective, first of all, you are able to get behind that plan, and frankly, not even just to get behind it, but to move it forward and to commend it to some of the most prestigious audiences in the world, frankly.
Well, from a security point of view, I can tell from my experience as commander on the Egyptian border that unlike the area of Judea and Samaria, which overlooks the major cities of Israel, in the Egyptian border, it's Israel that overlooks the Sinai Peninsula. We hold the high ground, the mountains of the Negev, and we are able to secure very well this area if there is a Palestinian state with capabilities, military capabilities in this area.
So we don't only hold the high ground, but there's also another thing that's the opposite of the two-state paradigm, which is the defensibility in terms of the depth. Now, you explained very clearly that in the two-state solution, Israel would be contracted down to 9 miles of width, whereas in the new state paradigm, in the case that the state becomes belligerent, which we always have to consider at the very least, though hope will not be the case, you explained that there is a defensible advantage there for the State of Israel. Can you just talk about that?
Yes, definitely. There is a very big strategic depth in the south due to the desert of the Negev and the fact that the major cities of Israel are not in proximity to this border.
So if this is a fight that should take place, which hopefully will not be the case, you would rather have to defend Israel from that flank than from the highlands of the West Bank. Is that correct?
Definitely. I believe that the green line, which everybody talks about, which differs from Judea and Samaria and the shallow areas of the major cities, is not defensible militarily.
So let's talk about a couple of other things. We've spoken about how, in terms of defensibility, it's advantageous or preferable to the State of Israel than the two-state paradigm. Let's talk about some of the advantages for the Palestinian Arabs if a state does come about in the area of the Sinai Peninsula and the Gaza Strip. One of the things people don't look at is the fact that the West Bank is completely landlocked. Tell us about some of the advantages immediately of a state in the peninsula.
Well, first of all, it will be contiguous. It will be a large state along the sea with an ability to build the airport and the naval port, to develop commerce, import and export. This is a real state, which will be a state living side by side with the State of Israel.
And of course, these trades that you mentioned, import, export, and so forth, these are trades that the Palestinian Arabs and also the people of the Middle East have mastered over the course of millennia and are very, very well practiced within. There's also the issue of tourism. That would be a ready-made industry were this state to thrive and to flourish in the image that we all imagine. Talk about the actual shoreline there. How tempting is that shoreline? How ripe is it for development?
Well, the shorelines of the Sinai Peninsula are one of the most beautiful shorelines in the world. And at this present moment, this area is controlled by ISIS terrorists. and there is no tourism there, not major tourism. And here there is an opportunity to clean the area from terror, to build along these shores beautiful hotels and develop it as we did in Tel Aviv. Although the shores of the Sinai Peninsula are much nicer than Tel Aviv's shores, but they can definitely do well in this area.
So these are some of the things that are immediately available. Now I want to hit 3 points in rapid fashion, if I may. Explain why on earth Egypt would be interested in being a donor state, giving about 10% of the peninsula for the construction of the new Palestinian state there.
Well, if somebody asked me 10 years ago whether the new state solution is viable, it can be done, I'm not sure I would have said yes. But the Middle East has changed completely in the last few years, and new alliances emerged, new interests emerged. Talking about overall the Middle East, today the Sunni Arab world is looking to get closer to Israel in order to tackle the biggest threat they see, which is Iran. And today there is an understanding that the major ally the Sunni Arab world has to fight Iran is the state of Israel. This is the first time in history that there is real chance of Israel signing peace contracts with the Arab Sunni world because of these interests, which is new and common to both sides.
So there are new interests. That gives it an opportunity for a new conflict-ending alternative. What else specific to Egypt?
Well, Egypt has a lot of problems. They are facing a very bad economy situation. There are 100 million Egyptians, and 30 million of them are practically starving. There is no food in Egypt. The other issue is security. Egypt is hardly controlling the Sinai Peninsula. Large areas of the Sinai Peninsula are controlled by ISIS. Egypt is having inner problems within Egypt itself due to the Islamic groups within Egypt. And Egypt has lost its predominance stance in the Middle East. And they want to be the leaders again and lead the Arab people. So this plan is giving them a chance to gain everything back, to be the leaders again, to get a large amount of money to help with their economy, to help with the security issues. So Egypt has a lot to gain from the new state solution.
So you've spoken about some of the interests that are there for Egypt: security, economic, and in terms of their status within the Arab world. It's instructive that President Trump, when he first made his trip to the Middle East, went to Saudi Arabia, whereas in the past, when President Obama first traveled to the region, he of course addressed himself most immediately to Cairo. So it does seem that there's been, if you like, a reshuffling of the areas of power, and what you've said seems to be very, very clear, very, very logical. What about, so we've spoken a little bit about what's in it for the Egyptians. What's in it for the Gazan people?
Well, in Gaza, as I said, there are 2 million people. 70% of them don't have jobs, don't have any future. And it seems as if the world has forgotten of these people. And that's why we see today all these riots along the Israeli border. Mm-hmm. They are saying to the world, we are here. Don't forget us. Don't deal only with Judea and Samaria. And we need to meet this call and understand that there is no solution for the Palestinian people without solving the problems in the Gaza Strip. These people need jobs, they need a vision, they need a future, and the new state solution is doing that. It's providing them with hope, with work, and with an ability to build a new life.
So this is with reference to the people in Gaza. Now, what about the Palestinian Arabs living in Judea and Samaria? I know there are different opinions within the working group. I know that there isn't one opinion at the moment. But there are certain points of consensus, namely that the Palestinian state would be anchored in the Gaza Strip with contiguity into the Sinai Peninsula. So what occurs with the Palestinian Arabs who are in Judea and Samaria?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind that nobody is forced to move anywhere.
In the new state
In the new state plan. Unlike the Oslo Agreement, which is talking about removing hundreds of thousands of Jewish people from their homes, the new state solution, basic idea is nobody needs to move anywhere. We are not taking any land from the Palestinians at all. We are adding a lot of land in the Sinai Peninsula, of course with the agreement of Egypt and the Arab world. Mm-hmm. And the people in Judea and Samaria were saying to them, look, you can stay, you can continue your life as an autonomy with a Palestinian citizenship and maybe Israeli residency. It could be possible. Mm-hmm. Most of the Palestinians today in Judea and Samaria want to be part of the Israeli ecosystem. The only problem Israel has is that we don't want to have 2 million more Israeli citizens with a Palestinian identity. We want to maintain the Jewish nation as it is. So the new state solution gives an answer to that. It builds a new state in Gaza, in the Sinai Peninsula, mm-hmm. and gives the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria citizenship in their own state. But they can be residents in the states of Israel, and this is a big deal for them.
So they would have citizenship of the new state, residency basically wherever they currently are. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so I'm going to just try and hit another couple of very, very quick points. A lot of people have said over the years, in very monolithic terms, frankly, not a single Palestinian Arab will ever leave Judea and Samaria. They're religiously attached to the land and they have no desire to move elsewhere. You actually take a different view of that, don't you?
Yes, I do. Well, the Palestinians themselves conduct polls every year about what people think about immigration. First of all, we see immigration all the time from Judea and Samaria, mainly to Europe, but also to South America. The Palestinians say that about 20 to 30% of the people in Judea and Samaria would like to immigrate if they have the economic capability to do so. In Gaza, the numbers are much, much higher than that. We see Arab immigration all over the Middle East and North Africa. So we shouldn't be surprised that people are not that attached to the land as you might think, and people are immigrating.
And those who are attached, of course, can stay.
And of course.
So on that, being attached to the land, that evokes another important issue, Jerusalem. A lot of people say, well, what will be the status of Jerusalem in the new state solution? Does that change? Is it altered? Do you envisage a capital for the Palestinian Arabs in East Jerusalem? What's the situation there, General?
Well, first of all, Jerusalem is the heart of the Jewish people. And I think that most of the Israelis believe that Jerusalem should be united and the capital of Israel. You can't have one capital for two different states. We just came from Berlin. They teared down the wall there. We are not going to build a new Berlin and build a new wall in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. Now, the new state solution idea is, of course, that if the state is anchored in Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula, obviously the capital of the Palestinian people will be in that area. It could be Gaza, it could be Rafah, it could be a new city.
It could be wherever they wish to.
Yes, wherever they wish to have a capital, they can. Regarding Jerusalem, Jerusalem is a religious center. And we have an agreement with the Jordanian regarding prayers in the mountain. And we won't change that.
In the temple.
In the Temple Mountain. And we are not going to change this agreement. Jerusalem will always be open for everybody to pray. Now I think that looking at the Middle East today, when we see Christians persecuted, decapitated, burned alive, crucified all over the Middle East, we should understand that the only state that can assure that everybody will be able to pray in Jerusalem is the state of Israel.
Last 2 points for this. We together have briefed members of the United States Senate, the Congress, we've briefed think tanks, we've briefed members of the British Parliament, members of the House of Lords, and we've also briefed in particular very, very elite graduate institutes of education, particularly in the areas of law and international relations. And the reaction there has been quite remarkable. What are you perceiving as you speak to this next generation of policymakers who are the students when they hear the new state solution idea?
Well, I think that anybody with a minimum of common sense understands that the new state solution is offering a solution which is viable in the long term, which give the Palestinians a real state, a sovereign state, side by side to the state of Israel. And it's a real solution, it's a viable solution. Now, people, especially young people, are growing up to a completely different world than their parents. They are in a world that is insecure, full of immigration, with ISIS and wars and terror. And they understand that in order to solve this problem, they need to look at it in a different way, a new way. So they're much, much more open to new ideas.
And my last question is this. We're not alone in this endeavor. There are people who stand behind us of similar rank. We have people from the Air Force, we have people from the Ground Force, we have people from the Navy, we have people from the Armored Corps. And all of them have assigned the best of their abilities and talents from tech and logistics to really moving the new state solution forward. Why is that? Why is it that a whole series of individuals who have recently retired and have reached the pinnacle of the defense establishment? Yaakov Perry just joined our working group, a former head of the Shin Bet, of the internal security forces in Israel. Why are these people assigning themselves, in your view, to the new state solution?
Well, first of all, I think that most Israelis understand that Oslo is dead. And people are looking for a new solution. And it's the first time that somebody puts on the table a completely different and real solution to this issue. And this, people get really excited when they hear about it, because the common sense people feel that that's it, there is no solution to this problem. There's a kind of despair in Israel and throughout the world. And having a new solution, this is big news.
But it needs to be a solution which is sufficiently tempting that it can be taken by the people on the other side of the agreement. And it needs to be a solution which, if implemented, the states of Israel can actually live with it. Is this a solution which, if implemented, the states of Israel can live with, and alongside which the states of Israel can thrive?
Definitely. This is a very, very good solution for the people of Israel. Not only talking about security, but we are a state that is growing very fast. We have a large diaspora, and many Jews are making aliyah more and more due to anti-Semitism in Europe. We need space. We need somewhere to live. Now, we can easily, with the blink of an eye, look 2,000 years back and talk about their second temple, or 3,000 years back and talk about the first temple, or when David conquered Jerusalem. Can we look 1,000 years in the future? Do we understand that we need to ensure that the state of Israel will stay here forever? We don't need a solution just for the next 5 years or 10 years. We need a solution for the next 3,000 years. And this is a viable solution that will enable us to live in Israel for any foreseeable future we can think about.
Well, General Avivi, I want to thank you. Of course, we've only touched upon the issues. There's much more detail on the website. People can actually look at the interests and how they align and how they diverge. People can look at several of the op-eds that you've written. And I know that this evening here at Sinai Temple, we're definitely going to put with all vigor and rigor the new state solution for the consideration of the audience. I know that there's nobody better than you to do that. And so I want to thank you. And I'm looking forward to being shoulder to shoulder up there with you as ever. And thank you for your leadership, your courage, your conviction, and also your vision. I think to have a vision that sees something anew after working so diligently for 30 years in a particular area of expertise speaks volumes for your character. And I'm humbled to be alongside you, and we're grateful to have you as the principal of the New State Solution. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.